Of Economic Advisors, Acting Chairman Tom Philipson. Tom, thanks for joining us. You were, of course, the head of economic policy for a time during the first Trump term. Now, as you're watching the second Trump term, I think a lot of investors have not freaked out about the tariffs because they thought that maybe that 10% range discussed earlier in the year might be the level. They thought, given all the other good policy from the Trump administration, maybe not too big a burden. But as you look now at a lot of countries, not just China, talked about in maybe a 25%, 30, 35% tariff. What do you think as an economist looking at these tariff possibilities?
There's a problem with the uncertainty, of course, but that's a short-term problem. What I think is going on is like we're settling in, right? My hope is that Vietnam is kind of the model. In July 2nd and 3rd, I think it was, they settled in on a deal. That's ultimately what we're looking for. What happened with Vietnam was essentially there's a threat of high tariffs from our administration. They go to zero on that threat, essentially, and we get more free trade for our companies in that country. The stuff today with Japan and South Korea at 25%, I kind of view that as, yes, it's out there, but let's see how they respond. Look at what happened with Canada. Canada said they were going to have our digital taxes. We responded, and then they backed off. So I think that this is not the end game that's coming out. Now, I have a feeling that this is kind of, the starting game of it. Now, some countries today, Laos and South Africa, are not really central to our trade. It's really the top 5 trading partners we have that are 2/3 of our imports that are really central.
Right, and with the threat to the BRICS nations, with the extra 10%, I just saw it as a way to kind of peel India away, potentially, away from Russia and China and Brazil, potentially. But big picture, and you have written about this, you wrote about this in January of this year, peace through strength and trade wars, that trade, not to dismiss what goes on, but only represents imports represent 13% of our economy, exports 11% of our economy, that it is a small slice of our gross domestic product. And even with the tariffs that have been in place, we've brought in customs and tariff revenue about $106 billion since President Trump took office. Our inflation, the annualized inflation rate, is 1.4% under President Trump so far. It was 5% under Biden. A large percentage of the tariffs are getting eaten by the exporters or even the importers. So there's just not that much to worry about. I'm the first person, Tom, whose pants and hair catch on fire. But I am just I'm very kind of calm about all of this.
Yeah, I think you should be, Dagan. You're exactly right. This tariff hysteria that both the mainstream media and the business press, to be honest, and a lot of economists actually are misrepresenting what's going on. If you look at CBO, let's say you have $200 billion in tariff revenue for a given year. That's about 1% relative to consumption. CPI covers our consumption, essentially, the prices of all goods. And it's a small, very small share of total consumption that takes place. Some of that is going to be eaten up by the foreign companies. If they're competing with American companies, they can't just pass on those costs on their prices, because then they lose up to customers who want cheaper goods. But it's also, if you have $200 billion in tariff revenue, that means you're spending $200 billion less on something else. So there's lower demand on other goods, which therefore lower their prices, which offsets the increased prices on any tariffs goods. So I think I said it, like you said, in January, February, I said this is not going to be inflationary because of the magnitudes involved.
Tom, I want to hit another issue, and that is we look at recent job gains in the United States. They're very much concentrated among native-born workers. When you look at that, does that mean that people who have been arrested for being here illegally and perhaps committing other crimes are no longer working, or is there something more going on there? What do you see when you look at those numbers?
Well, I think the first thing I recognize is that we had a lot of scaring going on in January, February, March, where everyone told us, or a lot of economists told us, that deportation is going to raise wages and going to be inflationary. That obviously did not happen for good reasons. So the liberals have been telling us now for decades that immigration does not depress wages. Okay, but now when they came out in January, February, they said deportation will raise wages. So in one sentence, they're saying increased labor supply of immigrants does not lower wages, but decreased labor supply of immigrants raises wages. Those are two conflicting arguments, essentially. And it's such a small share of the labor force. It's 1 or 2 million, and it's mostly illegal. So we want a labor supply of illegals, let's say in the drug market. We want that labor supply to be suppressed, presumably. But we have 170 million person labor force, of which 1 or 2 million illegals are not a big deal for wages.
Tom, great to see you. Tom Philipson.
Thank you.
See, hair not on fire. Imagine that. We'll see you soon.